It's black. Okay, so I had a very quick talk, so it was very short term that I heard that it should be something around 30 minutes. So I narrowed it down a bit, and today I would like to talk about a bit of theory, what's coming up in Joomla, what are best practices, give you a few keywords, probably you can look up after the meeting, things I consider as important for the current state of Joomla as a third-party developer. And if we have enough time left, yeah, I would like to talk a bit about the plugin system, the new plugin system, because yeah, I will mention it a few times. So probably I give a very quick, rough overview. Yeah, what's coming up, because it's changing more and more. So let's start. Is this in the way? I guess yes. So the question is, what's up with Joomla 4.1, especially for third-party developers? What should third-party developers know? And before we talk about this, I would like to make a little sum up things I consider as important step for Joomla 4 to go a professional way in terms of creating extensions. So one of the things I saw in the creation steps is that extensions send out emails still with the old email functionality without using email templates or mail templates. So I think one step is to look into the mail templates. The advantage of having mail templates is that user can manage the template layout by themselves. The second thing I would consider as very important is CLI access or functionality, because as you saw on the fourth point, Joomla is slowly, but we are going in terms of automation. So CLI access is a good way to go this road, because it depends a bit on your audience, of course, and for target group. But I think if you really would like to target professionals, it's not up to date anymore to give them only an backend interface, but to make bigger tasks, they need CLI functionality. Also, very important is now it's a time to move to a new plugin system, because if you remember, we have this old one on content prepare with this triggering, and then you have your own content prepare method, which is triggered, which still works in Joomla 4, but yeah, it's not the state of the art. We have a subscriber event, which I will explain later, which has a lot of benefits. Yeah, prepare for automation. Users don't want to manage their sites. They want to set it up once and then automate it and let it run. And that's my experience, at least from customers. They will probably put in new content, but they don't want to care about regular tasks they have to do all the time. Also very important, I think, is now go to the next level of PHP. So PHP 5 is dead, PHP 7 is nearly end of life. So you should be aware of traits, namespaces, of different concepts, like yeah, like we have in Composer, like NPM, the Web Asset Manager, and so on. So I think it's important to go to the next steps, also for security and for performance reasons, if you do it right. And what's, of course, very important for Joomla 4 is accessibility. Joomla 4 is running a big campaign regarding accessibility. All the marketing stuff will always mention accessibility. And I think a very big new market is coming there, especially for agency. And if you're targeting agency and your components or your extension is not accessible, they will most likely not use yours. And currently, the status is that not many extensions are accessible. So there's a lot of free and easy to get a market share in that term if you offer a functionality which is accessible. Like as I said, I had a talk with Phil, the new marketing department coordinator, 2 hours ago, and accessibility will always be the topic for the next releases for the next years. That was the look into the past, and now let's look in the future. What's up with Joomla 4.1? So very important for you as third-party developer is we have a new circle. Before we tried to have something like that already, but now we defined a 6-month release cycle for minor versions. So from now on, it's absolutely clear for the next, if we stick to it, and I hope we stick to it, for the next 20 years when the release will be there. So there is already a release plan, and as you can see here, the important dates are already set for 4.1. When we have the feature freeze, language freeze, and the release. And starting from the feature freeze, you should take the time and really try to give you a lot of time to test Joomla, if Joomla is compatible with your extension, and yeah, you have enough time to implement a new functionality. And the next question is, what's changed in Joomla 4.1? One of the biggest, so I have two big features here, but one of the biggest feature is the new scheduler from Tushar, and therefore we have a new task. So the scheduler is a plugin driven. This means if you want to automate stuff like cron job, you don't have to spend much effort into it. You just have to write a little plugin, and your stuff is automated. So this is something really worth looking into it and to be prepared, because I think this is really a selling point. If you have an extension, say, hey, you can automate it. Also, this next 2 points are linked together. This is from Dimitris, is the new child template. Child template means currently we have challenges like if you use the core template, Cassiopeia, and you would like to make overrides of existing overrides, you have a problem, because on the next update, they will be overwritten. And therefore, Dimitris implements a very, very cool functionality, and this is so-called child template, which allows to make a kind of a clone of the original template, but only takes the XML over. And then you can put in your files in the child template, and Joomla checks automatically if the file which is requested in the child template, if not, it falls back to the parent template. So you can make, so to speak, copies, forks of templates, and only change the parts you really need to change. And all the other stuff will be fallback to the base, to the parent template, which is a really nice feature. Why I mentioned it here is that as if you're a template developer, you have to enable it with a flag, and you have to make a certain structure in your template. And the most important one is all the assets, CSS, JavaScript, images are moved to the media folder. And this is also the way to go for the future, for a very simple reason. If we collect any assets in the media folder, people can protect that template folder with an HT access and close it down. So we have less target points for attackers. So if you're using or if you're building templates, or your extension does things with the template when you install it, and be aware that in the future, more and more templates, I assume, and especially the core templates, they will be for sure, they will have their assets in the medium folder. This does not change the override functionality of assets. It's just the placement of the files is different. Dimitris, anything I forgot you would like to add in that case?
No, everything's perfectly. The only thing is that I already wrote some code to help developers to help developers transition their existing templates to the new thing, and it's a Node CLI script. Let me just, I pasted the link in the chat. I don't know if we can share it somehow differently.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
And so all the links are also, if you Google for Joomla 4 Alpha, Joomla 4.1 Alpha 2, all the links to the pull requests are there too. There's a release note with all the pull requests, and it's very important that you check your extensions against these new features, especially if the template stuff, if you tinker around with templates, if it still works. And last but not least, again, accessibility. Brian, and I just saw someone, I guess it was you, Olivier, put in the link to Brian's test site, and it's also linked in the release note. We are currently in the process of building an author accessibility checker. And the idea behind this is there are these accessibility plugins in your browser, and you have an author on your page. He writes an article, clicks on the button, and gets 100 errors all over the page. And this is not helpful because an author normally can't change menu items or can't change headers. So we built a plugin where the page owner can define the scope which should be checked. And this will also be, so beside the child template and the scheduler, which will be the main points and will be marketing as the important changes, accessibility will again be one of the marketing goals. And again, as I said, you should show a look that your extensions are accessible. Otherwise, I think you will at least not lose people or lose customer, but at least will not come into the new group of potential customer who are creating accessible websites for different associations which needs accessible pages. So therefore, this plugin is also helpful for your extension. So it can be enabled in your extension, for example, and then you can check by yourself if it's accessible, or at least fix the problems. Accessible is a bit more than enabling a plugin. But it's very nice plugin which shows accessible errors and give recommendation how to fix it in a non-programming way. So it's not always needed a programmer to fix it, but if you have people who can do rudimentary HTML or stuff like that, they can also work with it. So yeah, so far. Any questions or any suggestions, ideas? Anything you would like to know?
I just have a question for you or Tushar about the scheduler. What are the triggers on which the scheduler is based? Is it like the real physical cron, or a front end trigger, or both at the same time? How does that work?
Yeah, I would say I go very quickly. I'm not sure how I can into my installation because I have it prepared.
If you want to talk about that later, it's fine. I just have the question now, but if you want to talk about it in your talk, it's fine. No worries.
Yeah, it's fine. It's fine. I will manage. So we have two triggers. We have the so-called lazy scheduler, which is triggered when the user is on the page. So there's in the background is a web worker /ajax call, which is called after a few seconds when the user is on the page to triggers the cron, so to speak, so the scheduler, the task, and we have the web cron, which gives you an link with a key to be triggered via cron job, for example, so via the server. And third, we have a CLI integration, so you can so Joomla 4 has this very cool CLI functionality. So there's only one file now, and you can extend it via plugin. So Tushar built a plugin for the CLI integration, so you can run it server side with the CLI integration. So we have, I hope we have covered everything. So you can decide, you can enable, disable what you would like to do, and run it as a web cron, which is then a cron job calling an URL, running it as a lazy scheduler, which is triggered by the visitors of your page, or last but not least, run it as a CLI script and real cron job script, which of course is a PHP cron job then. I hope this answers the questions.
Thanks.
Thank you.
I got one question, Benjamin.
Yes.
Yeah, just wanted to know, this functionality is available in the dev branch of 4.1. Is that it?
It's not merged yet. There is a pull request for it.
You have to install a patch.
In the repo. Sorry again.
You have to install a patch.
Yes. So it's a pull request still. The target is to be merged end of this month, and for then, then it's in the beta. So, or in the alpha 3, it should be in the alpha 3 and in the beta then. But for the moment, it's still a pull request to test.
If you want to try it now, what is how?
What you can do
like that?
What you can do is here on the bottom, click here on download and get a full Joomla 4. I saw that it's broken at the moment from the last commit.
Yeah, that's what I tried, but it was not working.
We will fix it today or at latest tomorrow. You click here and then you get a download pack with the full Joomla. You just install it like a normal Joomla one, and then you have it.
Yeah, but there were database issues. That's why I didn't manage to make it work. Okay. So we should wait. Is that it?
Yeah, please wait one day and then it will be fixed.
Okay.
And we'll be there.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So yeah. Any more questions for this?
Very good.
Okay. So yeah, oh gosh, I want to show this one. So I thought about what could I show you, what probably is interesting and related to Joomla 4. And I decided to talk a bit about a plugin, in this case, especially if you want to work with workflows and a scheduler, and they're running with the new subscriber interface, as you can see here. And I would like to give you a rough overview. We have now 10 minutes left. A rough overview, what you should consider just to get an insight how it works. The first question is, why do we need this new way of triggering plugins? And the answer is, in theory, we don't need it. We could go with the old one. It's working, and it still works the old way for the old triggers. But the new one gives a lot of benefits, like performance benefits, and also in handling the events. And one of the biggest difference between the old one and the new one is the following. The old one works the way that you install the plugin like a system plugin, and then Joomla loads all the enabled plugins, also checks the access level and stuff like that. And it gets a list of all plugins. And then it creates an instance of it. Says new plugin 1, new plugin 2, new plugin 3. Have it then there in a big list, and then if a trigger comes, the method of this plugin is called. And as you can see, as Joomla is handling or running around a lot of these instances, it's a lot of memory usage, which is not needed. And with this subscriber interface, it's different. Joomla does not create an instance of the plugin. It just asks the plugin, hey, tell me what triggers you would like to be executed. And Joomla remembers that, saves it in a list. And here a little side note, what's very nice, you can prioritize your plugins. You can say, hey, my plugin is very important. Then it will be ordered up in this list. Or you can say, it's not that important that it's the first plugin. Or probably, for example, a caching plugin should be on cache start. Also when the caching is collected, it should be the last one executed. But if the cache is there and it should load the cache, it should be the first who is executed. So with the subscriber interface, you tell Joomla what you would like to be executed or when you would like to be executed and how important you are. And this looks like that. So you tell there's one method, it's always the same. You can just go into the core, into any plugin of the new one. So it's probably workflow, and it's also in the scheduler, as you can see here. And it's called get subscribed event. And here you give an associated array, which is the name of the event, and then a method you would like to execute. So you don't have to go into the system and have all this on whatever methods in your plugin, but you can define your own plugin. You just have a mapping here. And what Joomla does now is it has this list somewhere saved, and then suddenly, let's say an article is called or is opened, and then there's a on prepare content. And then Joomla looks up and say, okay, which plugin told me I would like to be executed when there's a prepare content event. And in that moment, and not before, but only in that moment, an instance is created and the plugin is executed, or the trigger is executed. This is one of the benefits. So we don't have 20 or more system plugins hanging around all the time, being active, but nothing happens with them. And the second big change is that you don't get all the parameters now into your method, but you get an event. And I'm not sure, it could be that with Joomla 4.1 we manage, but the events now will be unique. So each trigger has this own event class type. In this case, execute task event. So it makes it much easier. So you, the benefit of this is that you exactly know what this event has. And this event can do different things, like it can gives you parameter, it can give you arguments. In our case, it's the params which are delivered, or on content prepared could be the content which is delivered. So you know what structure, what interface you get into your system. And probably, as you remember, this old stuff where you get our content prepare, where you have to check, is it an object or is it an array or is it directly in text? And then you have to do different things. And this happens, this does not happen anymore. And because you get a predefined structure in, and you can communicate with this event. And let's look, I guess, no, there's no communication here. But the other way could be that that you communicate with the event. So the event can give you interface and say, okay, I define a get output method where you can save output in it, or anything else. But still, it's not anymore this wild, everything can happen, but it's a really defined structure you can rely on. And this makes it much easier to handle these events. So if you are the extension component developer and you are triggering events, you can exactly give the structure which the plugin should follow when they use this event, and then you get exactly what you need and what you expect from it. So yeah, so and to do this, you just need a subscriber interface. You implement this, and you see here you need a namespace for it. You implement it. This is an interface for people who does not know. Interfaces are, let's say, rule sets how a class should look like. So the subscriber interface gives us, for example, enforce us to use this method. So we have to implement this method in our plugin to be used by the subscriber interface. And that alone allows Joomla to recognize, hey, this plugin supports the new way to do it. Let's do it a new way. And the old stuff is nearly the same. So you put in your functions, and here I opened the trade because to build it in a very smart way that it gives you a lot of helping functions which do stuff for you, and it's also from the workflow. So I always say, if you code PHP in Joomla, you do something wrong. That's not that true anymore, but Joomla gives you a lot of help. So if you stick to the core, as you can see, what we do here is that we enhance a form. We call a standard routine handler, and we advertise something. And this is, Tushar, correct me here, but this is normal stuff each task plugin in this case do normally, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So what Tushar built then for us developer is he built a trait, which is something like a parent class, but in the new PHP way, if you never heard about this. And he implemented all the stuff you need for executing this thing. And you can really concentrate. And as you can see here, make GET requests is the one which is implemented here on your stuff. And all the things around, like in this case, measuring the execution time, validating the task, if the task is there, logging the task, is happening from Joomla itself with this trait. So it's a very nice way to do it, I think. So,
does that blur the lines for plugins? You know, you have content plugins, you have system plugins. Does it make it every plugin being able to be anything?
no. So
you still have
Joomla still loads plugins by the type. So if you're a system plugin, you're always available. If you're a task plugin, for example, you only will be loaded if you're in the scheduler task environment, or if your extension loads it.
Okay.
But still, like in Joomla 3, if the plugin is loaded, then it's available everywhere. So
yeah, at the same time, what you're saying is that the cost of a system plugin is lower.
yes.
So maybe I would have less problem doing a single system plugin to do content and maybe a few other things because it doesn't cost much, right?
Yeah,
is that correct? Or
it depends. It could be right, but it could be wrong. If you have a system plugin which triggers on what is the last on after root, for example, this is a default system call. If you have a plugin who acts there, then your plugin is always executed. So then
Sure.
you have absolutely no cost saving. But if you have a system plugin and you put in content methods only, then it's only triggered when content is there, or when these content methods are called. And if you're in, for example, your own extension, or if you are in community builder, I guess they will not trigger content plugins, then your plugin has nearly no costs.
Mhm.
So of course, the file is loaded. This is
in that way, it's an improvement because you know I don't have a problem doing a system. I have less problems doing a system plugin to do several things at the same time. Yeah. Okay.
Yes, okay. But of course, you save more if you would do a task plugin. If it's only handle task stuff, then it would save more than a system plugin, because then the file is not loaded at all if you're not in the task environment. System plugins are always loaded. So it depends. It depends. That's the message. But if you do it in a smart way, you will save. And you can also, that's what we did. Another plugin, you can also make here checks like, hey, if you're a super user, then new tasks will be there. So you can register tasks based on, for example, are you an admin? Are you inside? Before it was always, hey, I have to make here the check all the time. Is admin, or the new one is client side, is client side, is client side. And here you just do it in the registration phase. You just don't register if you don't want to execute it on this client, like site, CLI, or administrator. So it makes it easier and saves code. So we did it for, let me open up. So Tushar built a scheduler system plugin to run all these scheduler things. And there we did this exactly the same. So system schedule runner. So this what I showed here code-wise is a task plugin to execute via cron shop, task scheduler, and get requests to certain URLs. Yeah, this is just to show it very quickly. So this is just here task plugin to execute get requests. In my case, I just ping Joomla.org. And we also have here test runner, so I can test it. And we are working currently at the output, but you see it works. The URL was there, and the response is too big to display here because it's a full HTML page. But it's registered. And now, Tushar, you have to tell me where it's the log is there. Probably I have to activate a log for it. Probably it's not here anymore. So yeah, you have the logs here, and yeah, I have to check, but the output is logged in files, so we have a logging system there. And for the runner, which is the system plugin for the whole thing, you can see
I
here
believe
we
the
have
logs are in the administrator logs folder.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Okay, I didn't activate it. I guess that's the problem. But yeah, don't waste the time. So it will be there. So we'll have the output there, and you can see then what happens if it works. As you can see here, what we did is, for example, that we only want to execute this plugin when we in the web, not in the CLI, for example. And on the side, we run the web cron, and over the administrator, we run the test, which is here. And we also have a web cron key. So the web cron is protected by a key, and this key can be re-initialized here by setting it here to yes. No, not here, to web cron. We set the key, and if I copy here the URL, so we have here key, and now we copy it now. We have a new key here, and this is should only work in the backend. So we limit this call to the backend only, and we don't have to put it everywhere in the plugin itself, and have just some rudimentary checks.
Very
So,
nice.
yeah. This was a very brief, or not brief, but very, very quick overview about the new subscriber interface, because I think I'm a very big fan of plugins, although they are not that healthy for a system. If you have 100 plugins, it's a performance thing, but for smaller things, I really like them. And I think if you go for the subscriber interface, you will get a lot of benefits. And especially if you look for different trades. So the new stuff has few trades already there for plugins, so you don't have to do all the stuff by yourself. Like I know for the workflow, I know for the scheduler that they have trades which supports you a lot and save you coding code. And the good thing, if you use Joomla core stuff, I bet it's better tested and it's used by more people than your own extensions, and you don't have to take care of it. It's taken care from Joomla.
So the elephant in the room. How do we do that also on Joomla 3.10?
Is someone still using free? I thought it's dead. You can't. So it's not in Joomla 3 implemented. You could backport it, of course, but it's Joomla 4 feature. So, yeah.
Anyone having any questions for?
Same question for Joomla 2.5.
Yeah, 2.5 has it. So if you go back to 2.5, oh, it's recorded, right?
1.0, not 2.5. 1.0 had it.
Yes.
Yeah.
We removed it for Joomla 3 by purpose, just to have these questions here.
Yeah, I'm joking, but of course, it's always an important question because
Yeah.
for people who are writing extensions for custom custom extensions for clients, then it doesn't matter that much because you know which platform you're targeting, and if you move to Joomla 4, then you adjust to Joomla 4. But for people who like me and others here who are writing extensions for the Joomla ecosystem, then we need to handle both at the same time. Currently, we need to handle Joomla 3. There's no Joomla 4 market, so to say, yet. So it's important to be able to try and find a way to, before we can actually use these features for the next, well, for some times, we need to be able to have code that runs on both, basically. I mean, at least in my case. So that's an important question.
Yeah.
Any more questions? Something.
I don't see any question in the chat either. Thanks so much, Benjamin, for showing that to us. I'm sure that the template stuff is going to interest anyone. That's a lot of new stuff. Thank you very much. And I also wanted to thank Laura for sharing her account today, so that we could have this meeting set up as fast as possible. Thanks also to Tushar. I don't know if Tushar, you have something to add to what Benjamin said, or thanks.
I think he pretty much put it all out there.
Yeah.
The question always people asking Tushar how hard it is. As Tushar, you have to know Tushar started without any Joomla knowledge, and I hope you're okay to say it, without much or not at all PHP knowledge 3 months ago. How hard is it now for people to write task plugins and use the new functionality? What would be your estimation?
I think even for a complete beginner with Joomla or PHP, writing task plugins is very simple. So just around, I think it was 1.5 months back, we had Eliza Foltine build a task plugin for Joomla. So hers was the first third-party plugin, and she was able to make it in around 10 hours, 5-7 hours or so. It was a simple plugin which involved cleaning out some stuff from locations, so you could make checks for how old files are and clear out files older than a certain period in certain locations in your Joomla installation. It was a neat task plugin. I think she managed to do it pretty fast, and she's not a very experienced extension developer as far as that goes.
Okay, you said that that's an infrastructure to run scheduled tasks. Does that, like, I assume then there's an API where I can say I want to run this particular code at, every Monday or something, or next Monday, or at a given time. Do you have some provisions for locking tasks? Like when you have that sort of things, what happens if there's I want to run a task every 5 minutes? What happens if there are two, like with a front-end scheduler, then you might have multiple requests trying to run the same tasks at the same time. Is there kind of a locking mechanism or something like that where you ensure that, on very busy sites, you might have multiple requests for your Ajax request that's doing that? So do you have a mechanism to locking mechanism?
Yes.
I would share the screen again, and I guess Tushar can explain it better. So let me start, and Tushar will put in the details. So if you create the task itself, you can define when it should be executed, and yeah, so we have a locking method in. So if a task is starting executed, it will be logged, all the tasks, then this task is executed, and then you can either unlog it, or you can define a time when you define, like, if for 1 hour it's locked, then the log will be released, so you're not stuck. And probably, Tushar, you can explain now about the priority, because that's the important question. What happens if 2 tasks or 3 tasks are due, but 1 task is running for 1 hour, and then we have 4, 5, 6 tasks which should run half an hour ago? What happens now?
So as far as triggering tasks via the scheduler goes, because there are other ways to trigger tasks with WebCron, for example, or if you want to trigger a certain task from the CLI, not targeting the scheduler itself, but a particular task, then in that case, you can have concurrent execution. But as far as the scheduler goes, we only allow a single task to run in concurrency. So we have in the database pseudo logs, and based on that, we do some filtering and sorting, and we ensure that if a task is already running, we don't run another task unless it's stopped.
Okay.
With the priority stuff, you have, if you want, if there's a high priority task that you always want to take precedence over other tasks that might have low priority, so you can adjust the priority of your task, say a high priority task, and it will block out low priority tasks. So that way you get to kind of have a safeguard against a critical task not getting delayed. Yeah.
So for example, the radio is always running, but the break is only working every half an hour, if you want to do it that way.
Okay, so basically that is a concurrency of 1. You lock the task using the database.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
It's
that's cool. Okay, that's cool. Thanks.
And of course, if something fails, you can get notifications out of the system. And having the logging there too.
For the logging, we have logging for the scheduler as a whole, and then you can also have logging on a per task basis.
And does it email, or is it just put it in a log somewhere?
That depends. If you have email for regular executions switched on, then it'll email you on each successful execution also. Otherwise, the default is it emails you if there's a failure of some sort.
Sweet. Okay.
So you can set it up here and say, when should it email, on success or on failure?
Does it notify the emailing system in Joomla, or can you send emails?
Yes, email system in Joomla. That's currently status. Probably that's a more future task, but I think this email management thing should be more wider in usage. So not only for backend, but also for frontend, and everyone should get emails. And then this can benefit more from it. But currently, it's you need to activate this get system email flag in your account, and you get the notifications.
Yeah, makes sense.
Oh, I'm sorry, I think I'm muted. Okay, so task events, the email infrastructure is extensible at the moment. So with tasks, what you have is on every successful execution or on a failure, we dispatch events, which you can lash onto and have your own extension do something if that needs to be done.
Yeah, right. It's very important. I think very cool that if you make a backup and it fails, you could run the backup again or another backup script. So something like that.
So what I thought originally was also we could have integrations with other platforms like Pushbullet, which are, I think, pretty popular these days with administrators and people who are automating things.
Yeah, or just go to Slack, or send a notification to Slack or something like that. If we had plugins for that, it would be
All right.
And again, it's very easy to create this plugin because most of the stuff is already given.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the basic structure around that, and then you can just add your stuff to it. So it's very nice. I already have ideas in my mind about the extensions that are going to benefit from it.
It was the hope of this project to make it possible, yeah, especially for third-party developer. That's our hope. It's third-party developer goes there and create a lot of plugins. So all this task stuff, so if you create a new task, here are plugins. So you create, just as I showed before, plugins, and then it appears here automatically if it's published, and people can use it. So, and it looks like, so we tried to evaluate the module selection, so it looks familiar. And yeah, you push in the plugin into the system, and you have it here.
Mm-hmm. That's cool. Are these going to be part of the ones you show us right now? Are a part of the project? Or
there are currently, we are not sure if we ship all of them, although it's a nice thing toggling websites online offline. I'm not sure if we put it there or if we put it in the Joomla extension directory.
mm-hmm.
But
it will be very interesting. Yeah.
Will be there for sure.
Yeah, it will be very interesting to have them around so that we can see how the code is written and learn from it too. Mm.
Yeah.
All right, thanks, Benjamin, and thanks to Tushar too for showing us all that.
You're very welcome.
Laura just joined us.
Hey, Laura.
Hi, Laura.
We lost a couple attendees, but we were quite a few. There were quite a few people already here, so that was great. I think we had a great meeting. We learned a lot of stuff from Benjamin, Tushar, Dimitris, and I think we got the foundation for our group, and hopefully we go forward from there.
Yep. There's one thing I'd like to discuss and with Benjamin, because you're kind of a representative for the core developers, of course, because you're here tonight, so it's going to be on you. But even before you arrived, the discussion, there were a couple of items that standed out, and the first thing was documentation. And I think that's something many people here in this group are going to be willing to, work on, so that we eventually or finally have a proper documentation for third-party extensions developers and how to use Joomla to do that. Because today and for the last 15 years, the proper method has been to just jump into the code and try to figure out how it works. So, and that's obviously it's feasible, and that's how you learn, deep. But obviously, it takes a lot of time. Maybe Tushar would have an opinion on that. I don't know, but it's more complex than if you can get started with a proper set of documentation. I'm not talking about the API, obviously, because that's easy to do, but really how things are structured and where do you go from A to B to C. And Jeroen shared what I've seen to be the most extensive documentation on Joomla 4 by Astrid Gunther. I don't know how to pronounce her name, but and that's a very good thing, and that's a very good basis, and we can discuss about the tools and everything. But that's really what's something that needs to be done, I feel. And we would, if there's a message to be passed right now to core, maybe it's one of them. And the second thing is something we discussed together on
question here. Yes, so we also had a feedback session with the students, and Tushar was very friendly because he said, the documentation is not that good in Joomla, and to be honest, it sucks. The developer documentation and nothing to speak politically correct. It's not good, and we know it. And yeah, but the question is, what can? So yes, I agree. What can we do as you said, some people would like to contribute, which is very nice. I really like that. What can we do to make your life or our life easier? What this would be probably a question I would like to give back.
The thing that popped up right away is the tool chain is not so suited to developers, because it's going to be developers writing most of it, some of it or most of it, and the tool chain being based on Wikipedia or media is not suited to most people here. And more modern, what we use, I use Make Docs. Dimitris uses Docsify. There are options there where you can just write markdowns and have a proper page, a set of pages produced, static pages mostly, with a proper table of content and a nice design and easy to integrate code and things like that. It's really easy to do, and the code, the documentation is on GitHub in a Git repository, and contributing to documentation is a matter of sending a pull request. So it's things that people are mostly familiar with. And of course, I'm aware that the documentation team is a team by itself, and they have their own priorities and their own way of doing things. But that's something, if that can be sorted out, it's probably going to be beneficial.
Are they translatable? Are these translatable or not?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it will make it trivial to translate, because it's just another folder, if you will. I mean, with Make Docs, for instance, that I use most of the time, not always, it's another folder. You have the default language and Spanish, whatever.
Yeah.
So it's really easy.
If you have to, or if you should split up the documentation in a kinds of coding documentation. WordPress have, how is it called? Codex, I guess.
Yeah, the codex.
Like that. And as you say, normal user documentation, because there should be still a lot of tutorials, and it's hard to bring normal people to make pull requests. So probably the idea is to split it up in a way. Just a thought that.
But the writing experience is simpler for everybody, but it's simpler, and what makes it. I'm aware. I read things where the documentation team was very keen on keeping the Wikimedia software, because it allowed lots of regular people just contribute to the documentation. But I do think that for developer documentation, then it's more beneficial if we can split and use different toolchain today, at least in 2021. That's my feeling. Yeah. So if we can pass the message or tell us, I mean, people like Dimitris or myself and probably others, we can do things there. But in the end, it will probably have to be on some Joomla infrastructure. So there has to be a buy-in from the team, from the.
Even me, though, I'm not a developer, and I've tried to edit like documentation for. I think Benjamin might have helped me to fix it because it broke when I edited it. So even someone simple as me can try and help out, finds it impossible to do.
Yeah. So probably we should do not only transfer the message, but plan a meeting and brainstorming meeting, an open one, lead by the documentation team, something like that. And so everyone can prepare. So I think all your concerns are absolutely valid, and it's really a weak point in Joomla, the documentation. I guess Tushar had really suffered through all this non-documentation, and it's.
Benjamin, is there like a subgroup within the documentation team where the focus is documentation for the developers?
No, I think the documentation team itself is very small. It contains Sandra, Jen probably, and we are 3 or 4 people are there only.
So maybe ask them if they could use some assistance, but it's only going to work if, we now have this Facebook group has 60 people in it. Most 90% are developers that could help with it. but they need a very specific plan of attack. You know, I don't want to waste anyone's time. That, you know, Benjamin, you and I, we hate wasting time. So yeah, maybe reach out to them and let them know we have people that are available and willing to help, but they need marching orders. Because I've tried to do documentation as well, and I've effed it all up completely. And it took me so long to learn how to do it. So I remember when I was doing Bugs and Fun, my colleague and I decided to just do the documentation piece. I remember doing it with Olivier, and we know how to edit wikis because we use wikis over here. And yeah, we really messed it up. So, but we have the people. So we just need the marching orders from them and to up the priority because we need it. So people like the developers that are in this room right now are able to latch on with Joomla in the proper way.
Yes, agree.
Yeah, it could be as simple as GitHub pages. Don't even need really, Joomla infrastructure and the domain and all of that. Just a GitHub repo, GitHub pages, and it runs automatically. There's no maintenance or anything. Again, it's a Docker container running make docs or other things, and it goes into GitHub and GitHub Actions. It's going to be free. But at some point there needs to be someone needs to get started with that. And of course, we can't do that without telling the documentation team at all, right? So
yeah,
there needs to be some
message. And I think don't nail me down. Let's say starting coming year, because currently, so I will bring it now the message, of course, in the next meeting. But I personally have to bring Joomla 4.1 at least in feature-free state. And then I have this, I have getting people in with Laura. Laura is doing most of the thing. I just pushing tasks to her. But this is on the agenda, and I think documentation is part of it because not all people can program for Joomla, but I guess program for Joomla is 10% of the stuff who has to be done. It's.
Is there a reason it hasn't been done in the past? Is there any resistance to it, or?
Sorry again.
Is there a reason that it hasn't been changed in the past? Is there any resistance to changing the system? I think in the past there might.
Yes. So first of all, the problem is really that we have thousands of articles which has to be converted then in a way if we change the system and have to take over. And we don't have the resources, so just 2 people can't do it. So George, for example, updated the wiki or what is Docs Media or something like that is the software. It's not a Wikimedia, it's a Docs Media or something. And it took him weeks as a lonely person to update just to the latest version. And if we migrate it to a new system, it's too small. That's why I think the first step would be to.
We have a huge community. We could easily ask people, we need help. We've got thousands of articles, but if we can get like 100 people to help and everyone does 10 each, then it's no job at all.
And that's.
Do we need to migrate? There's no need to migrate, right? It could be. It would be simpler if we start by splitting and saying, developer documentation goes on that new system, and the rest goes as before, and then we'll see what happens.
Anyway.
But
So split it, Yannick. Yes, split it. So basically, we can start with the developer documentation, the user documentation. That's another animal. What we don't want is to give them a reason to say we can't because we have to do all of this.
Yes.
No,
I completely agree with you. Just to focus on the developer documentation, which does not have to be in the same tool.
Yeah, there's no reason for that. It's going to be simpler. It could be like an experiment, if you will. And if it works, it works. If eventually they like it better, maybe they can switch to the system. If they, everybody their own needs and requirements. And I think it's better to start with an experiment and get started and see where we go. And with a simpler system, it can work. I think for developer documentations, it's so easy. Since the day I switched to that sort of system for documentation, it's day and night compared to what I had before.
Yeah, and we could go from Joomla 4 forward, and we don't have to go all the way back to 2.5 documentation. we can just go. So we start Joomla 4 and all the stuff from that coming forward.
So yeah, let me
Okay.
talk with some people and let me organize. I think we should really do a brainstorming meeting. It should not be a decision from a, are we still recording? From a non-that active, that's not, they're active. That's not true. They're absolutely active. They do what they can do with their limited resources. But yeah, we should not burden them more with saying, hey, do something. But I think we should then, and which I really like that so many people here say, hey, I would like to help, should sit together, brainstorm, having an idea what would be the goal, and then we can start with it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you for the input. It's very good.
And there was another thing that we discussed, you and me, briefly on Glip, and it was the other thing is this lack of communication, between developers, third-party extensions developers, and core team. There's no team, but core developers, let's say, and that is how to get feedback. And you don't get feedback, and sometimes third-party developers think their feedback is not heard. And I agree, there's basically no I think there's no communication happening actually there. So I just throw through the idea of adding a couple of additional tags maybe on GitHub issues. Because if I go to GitHub, to the Joomla CMS repo, GitHub issues, then there are hundreds of issues, and most of them are not something of concern to me, something I can help or something so I don't know really where to go and where to look. So I think it would be important to have, or it will help to have a way for you guys to surface issues where you need feedback, and in the same time it will be easier for us to identify conversations where we need to have some input. So I suggested having a couple of tags, and of course we would need to communicate that in that group and everywhere we can, so that developers should go to these issues first to get feedback.
Yeah, to be honest, I understand this, and in theory it sounds good, but I think this will not work out from my experience. It's my personal experience, because we have so many tags and they are not used in a good way for different reasons. What I would prefer is more something like we did today. So I can't remember when was it? Was it JUG London? I guess JUG London, where I made a real this is what I do today, or did today in 15 minutes. I did it in 1 hour. So really talk about what's the status, what did we do the last 2 months, what are we working currently, and where do we need help? And I think this is the better way to have regular communications from the board, from production in that way. I'm not sure, was it you, Laura, who we talked about this? I talked with Laura so many things. So.
Yeah, we did. I mean, this group is technically just a Joomla user group, right? But in theory, if this could start that conversation, it's not a working group or anything official like that. It's just extension developers, which is pretty laid back, as long as we're allowed to do it. You talk with Olivier, if you want to have a monthly meeting, and the first part of the meeting, you can create the agenda, right? So the first part is to talk about status on specific things and what's needed and this, that, and the other thing. And then the other part could be an actual presentation, more official presentation. So kind of like the Joomla user group of London, when they had their meeting, it's a pretty long meeting, but you have different aspects of it. You guys can do the same thing here, and this could become that conversation. It shouldn't be the only conversation because it's not an official working group, but if it gets you guys talking and it helps you, then why not?
It doesn't have, and it doesn't have to be a presentation like you do slides and stuff like that. It could be your screen and you say, okay, listen, here we have these GitHub issues and there've been all these pull requests and we are talking about this and this and that, and what do you think? And that's totally fine. That's vastly enough, really. And if we can schedule maybe every month is a bit optimistic, but every 6 weeks or 2 months, and we have that meeting. It's perfect. It's better than tags. I agree. Tags is a bit theoretical because there are plenty of tags already. So I agree with that.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, sounds good.
Let me write it down to bring it also.
So just check with Olivier or, your group. You guys decide the dates, and Benjamin, if the focus is really on 4.1, you just want to make sure you have Benjamin, or Benjamin picks someone else to be that representative to have the conversation. And you just set up the next meeting in January, whatever you want. That's what this has started. So right now, I think we have like a dozen people still here, but you said when the meeting began earlier, you had a handful more?
Yeah. Mhm.
Super.
Yeah.
We had Daniel, we had Eric Lamy, we had Daniel Dubois, we had
Fantastic.
It was not like 25 people, but it was just a bit more. And you need to get started. Not everybody is available here.
That's okay. Listen, more than
It raises a question. Yeah.
it's good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It raises a question that we'll have to address maybe later on, and we didn't mention it here, is that at your initiative, we started on a Facebook group because it was easy. It was there, and we didn't have to do anything, and we just started a Facebook group, and it was there. But obviously, it may not be the best solution for everyone. Like Benjamin, I don't even think you're on Facebook, right? So maybe there's a better platform, but at the moment, this is what we have, and we can do videos, meeting like we did today. Maybe in a few months we'll have a better platform where we have more people coming. But actually, I'm not aware. I'm not sure what that can be. Suggestions are open.
Use Google Plus.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, that will be very efficient.
Now again, I have to ask Laura. Wasn't there a plan to have a JUG kit or something like that? To have a finished web page with the subdomain, and you just call Luca and he press a button, and then you have a web page running with the most important things. Wasn't this a plan, or was it only an event?
I don't know. I think that's in like our dream world. But for now,
Joomla Day has it already. And
no, Joomla Day doesn't have the page. It just has the URL.
Okay.
It's just the DNS. So I thought he was going to create a DNS for user groups as well. It was like Joomla user group or something just like Joomla Day online or something. I think that was the URL. Yeah. So it's really just a URL. It's not a building of a website or anything like that. But I think this group, if they wanted to, they could build a website. They're definitely capable if they want to. It's up to them. But the Facebook group, the only problem with the Facebook group, although you have 60 people, there were a lot of people on Glip that did, a lot of people are very like, no, I'm not going near Facebook, that type of thing. But as long as you're able to get the word out to people when you have meetings like this, it doesn't need to be only on the Facebook group. So the question is where, for any of these recordings, where you're going to host them. You can just upload it to YouTube and slice it a little bit, and then send out a link, to the video that people can have access. You just want a place to keep them if you think it's worthwhile for people to be able to go back.
Certainly.
So that's up to the group. But I suggested to Olivier to create the group on Joomla.org as an official Joomla user group, because even if I've been asking to remove the location in a JUG, because it is not required to have a physical location, I don't know if they officially have yet, but this is a valid user group. So try to create it, and let's see what hoops you have to go through. We were very careful on making sure Luca gave us the right name. So we would go through that correctly, and we got that. So now request the access, and and then hopefully other virtual user groups based on topics like this will start happening, because I think this is really powerful. Thank you.
We get the ball started.
Yeah.
Get the ball running.
I think for now, the Facebook group is fine, I think, right? for the foreseeable future, it's fine. It's the easiest, and like you said, you have plenty of people already. So we couldn't find, between the three of us, Ian, Olivier, and myself, we couldn't find a chat platform we are all on. Like we tried Glip, Slack, Teams, whatever. It doesn't work. We don't have that. So you see how complex it can be.
Yeah, and I think that's perfectly fine. So it's more of, the Facebook group is for the instant conversations, but I think if you have these regular meetings, I know when we originally first started, I said you can have a meeting once a year. It doesn't matter to me. If you feel that these get-togethers are going to be more worthwhile because you have someone from Joomla Core and you're going to have someone's ear to you at that time, then maybe you will have them more frequently and it'll be more useful and you'll get, really good feedback. So that's, yeah.
Yeah. There's also something we discussed before the meeting, which is there's also a Google group for, exactly focused on Joomla development, the Joomla -dev.general. And you have people there asking questions about how to develop extensions and how to port them to port them to Joomla, upgrade to Joomla 4 and things like that. And I think it's important that we go there regularly because it's a strong basis. There are people used to asking questions there. I've seen the number of posts per day because I get alerts here, so notifications. So I've seen the number of. Sorry.
Who moderates this? Is there a moderator?
I don't think so.
No, I don't think so. I didn't see any information about moderation.
It's just a Joomla Google group. Yeah, you've got the address, the URL in the chat, and it's useful. But I've seen over the years the number of posts per day has gone down dramatically, and but it's still there's GitHub discussion also, but it's still a good place to be. I think there are people asking questions there, but there are not that many people replying. That's the point.
But perhaps this would be a good place to put the announcement of a future meeting to let
You're
people
right.
know about it.
Yeah.
And plus, what about with what's it called? Not Slack. Oh, he's going to be so mad at me because he did a whole session on it in J Day. I'm losing my brain. What is it called? Not Slack. It's
Not Slack. It's Teams.
no,
Zoom,
not
Skype,
Discord. No. Our
Google
friend
Meet.
from
Discord.
Australia. No, from Australia. What is it?
Aussie chat.
How do we not know? We should all know what this is because he talks about it all the time.
From
So what did
Australia.
Patrick talk about?
What is it?
From Patrick?
No, Mick. Joomla support platforms.
Stack Overflow.
Stack Exchange.
Stack.
Oh yeah, you're right.
So that might be a place where, again, I'm not requiring or saying anyone, to be in all these different places is impossible. But when you have a meeting, maybe go to Joomla Stack Exchange. Yes.
Yeah, yes. Mm-hmm.
That's what I meant. Yeah.
Okay.
And he
there's also the GitHub discussion.
Yeah.
On JDay USA. And if you're not members of it, you can join. If you go to our homepage, you can request access, and there's 28 videos on here, but Mick's video about Joomla Stack Exchange is on there.
May I say something on something similar to documentation, like relevant, not similar. One thing that I mentioned to George early on the Joomla 4 development was to have tools that make sense for developers in the repo. We have some tools, but I don't think that for developers, those tools are really helpful. I mean, you have things that you can do, the JavaScript, the SAS and stuff like that. But a developer needs more stuff. It needs to package his extension, it needs to fetch the languages from whatever. There are lots of things that a developer needs, actual needs to do development proper. I'm willing to offer the tools, but somehow these need to be published in a Joomla repo. And once they're published, they're going to be Joomla. It's not going to be on me. So that's mostly for the Benjamin to hear again the proposal that was old one. But I think that, yeah, if you need to help developers, okay, docs are good. But if you also have tools to help them, like you can have, I don't know if anybody here is familiar with Laravel Artisan, where you build models, controllers, you do the migration of the database, you do everything basically with the CLI. We can have the same thing in Joomla. It doesn't have to be PHP, it can be JavaScript, but it doesn't matter what it's going to be, because it's going to be just the CLI. And you say, okay, I need to make one component, the name is that, the namespace is that, blah, blah, all the things that you just answer questions. What's the name of the component? What's the namespace? What's the controller? Blah, blah. And it gives you out of the box a very nice base, and you can do stuff. And then with the other tools that you will have, you can do your JavaScript, your CSS, SAS, you can do your language fetching from whatever you're using and stuff like that. And at the end of the day, you just say, okay, release package, and that's it.
Yeah, it's been an issue also, like when we do Joomla Bugs and Fun, it's like when there is an issue with JavaScript or CSS, we have to recompile the whole project so that we can see the changes and so the stuff when we apply a patch. And this is something that is difficult to do without the proper tools.
Yes. And I think that will be extremely helpful. I mean, first of all, it's documentation, because without documentation, people cannot start doing anything. But if you have tools, maybe people will skip documentation and say, okay, I will start with the tools because the tool is already giving me a module, a plugin or something. And they will just then start digging the documentation and say, okay, I want to do something with the user, I want to do something with the database, blah, blah. And then they will start seeking for the documentation as they go. So they don't have a blank screen watching and say, okay, what am I doing here? They run a CLI command and they get somewhere and then starting exploring the docs.
Yeah.
I think that's something that will help massively the project to also get more components, modules, plugins. Okay, most of them they're gonna be bad quality, but at least if the tools are good, they're not gonna be the lowest quality, like WordPress, let's say.
Yeah. All right.
All right.
Well, thank you very much, everybody, for joining us for this meeting, for this first. So we were thinking of doing it every couple of months, but depending on how we're going to deal with how we want to follow the discussions on issues and stuff like that with the core team, we may have meetings a little more often. We'll see that. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, Laura, for your account and your help. Thank you, Benjamin and Tusha, for your presentation. Thank you, Dimitris, also for your insights. And well, thank you, everyone.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it.
Have a great evening. Most of you are